Superman is probably the most iconic of all superheroes. He's the one superheroes are named for.
He's the Nietzschean fantasy ideal all wrapped up in a red cape. The Superman.
He's bigger than life. He's just our modern myth.
I always felt I was different, even before you and Pa told me I was adopted, but how was it possible I could do these things?
Originally, Bruce wanted it to be 40s. He wanted it to be a period piece.
We did toy with the idea of doing a very retro-style Superman show. I actually did a whole bunch of character designs that were very, very 40s looking. I mean, even more so than what we had done with Batman.
That would have made the show feel almost as though it was an extension of the Fleischer cartoons.
So I abandoned that approach, and I think for the better.
Bruce realized, no, the show has to stand on its own. So instead of having it placed in the past, let's place it in a sort of pseudo-future past.
Just what is your problem with Superman?
Everything's just so darn easy for him.
There was a joke at DC Comics, which was, how do you write stories about a character who can destroy the universe by listening real hard?
Did you hear that?
If you go by the comics, he can push a planet out of orbit, and you know, if you go to that level, there's no story you can tell. The show's going to be over in 5 minutes.
We did Superman a few years after Batman, and in that time, we felt we had learned a lot of things about doing an half-hour-long adventure show.
It wouldn't be bad if people knew a little more about Superman. I don't want anyone thinking you're like that nut in Gotham City.
We so wanted to flex different muscles than we had on Batman. Batman, everything was, even though it had a lot of really, good high-adventure action scenes and stuff, it was still very much grounded in reality. Whereas Superman, you've got this alien from another world who leaps tall buildings in a single bound and does all this other stuff. It's kind of like, automatically you're playing with a whole different set of rules. So what better way to establish the difference between Batman and Superman than by starting the show literally on another planet?
When I first got hired, designing the people on Krypton was the first assignment I had to do. And it was really like, oh my God. Because, if you just start on Superman, well, you know what Superman looks like, you know what Clark Kent looks like, you know what Lois looks like. That's easy, but Krypton is usually the most 15 minutes in any story about Superman, and it's over. And then, of course, the first thing I was told was, don't make it like anything that's been done on Krypton. So I'm like, oh, geez, how do I do this?
It's so hard to find something unique because everything's basically been done. But the thing that we really wanted to avoid was making it look Earth-like at all. We really wanted to make it seem like an alien culture, everything from the clothes they wear to the architecture. Rather than going with the usual cliche of miles-high skyscrapers, we thought, okay, well, Kryptonians are so advanced that they've somehow managed to combine their technology and build their city in harmony with nature. So we started looking at organic shapes. So we started looking at shapes from nature, flowers and plant shapes. So that's why all the buildings are somewhat asymmetrical.
Oh, Jor-El. Such a beautiful world, even up here. It's hard to believe it could all come to an end.
Bruce made it a home. He made Superman's parents these really loving, caring parents. And if you watch that first episode, they're touching a lot and they're kissing a lot. And they're two people who are really in love. So when their planet is destroyed, you really feel bad for them. You really feel bad about how difficult it is for them to give up their son.
Once he gets to Earth, he'll be safe.
I think it turned out really well, and it was really interesting to come up with the different motifs.
Good afternoon, Jor-El.
Brainiac, what an unpleasant surprise.
I did have one good idea. I did have my one good idea was, I said, Bruce, it'd be interesting if Brainiac came from Krypton.
Should I not be saved above all?
You self-righteous monster.
Temper, Jor-El.
I was a little bit resistant to it at first because part of it just me being a diehard geek and being a traditionalist and thinking, well, Brainiac doesn't come from Krypton. Nobody ever did that before. That's just wrong, And but somehow he was able to talk me into it, and ultimately I think it's a really great idea. I think it really works really well tying Brainiac into Superman's Kryptonian heritage. It's almost generational. I mean, he was Jor-El's enemy, as much as he is Kal-El's enemy. And so I think that's kind of a neat thing.
You are your father's son, Kal-El. Headstrong, foolish, easily defeated, and ultimately forgotten.
the stories in Superman had to be larger than life against larger than life menaces. Whereas a madman like the Joker or Mad Hatter could easily propel a story for Batman, those guys would be easily dispensed with Superman. The powers got greater with Superman, so the threats had to get greater.
Hey! Hands off my hog!
The fact that Superman stories are grander, broader, it allowed us the freedom to do things that we couldn't really do on our first take on Batman. There was always an edict on the old show to make it believable and make it real. So there was no magic. And with Superman, it's like all bets are off. You have a character that can do it so much, and a world that's so broad and so big. And we have the opportunity to have more fun with them.
At one point, Bruce asked me, if you had a chance to go back to Batman or continue on Superman, what would you do? And I said I'd go with Superman. I was enjoying it. I was having a good time.
I'm proud of the show because of how good we tried to make everything.
We really reached the height of what Superman can be. If you go by the comics, he can push a planet out of orbit. And, if you go to that level, there's no story you can tell. The show's going to be over in 5 minutes.
Just what is your problem with Superman?
Everything's just so darn easy for him.
There was a joke at DC Comics, which was, how do you write stories about a character who can destroy the universe by listening real hard?
Did you hear that?